All right, welcome to the Big Texas Podcast presented by Texas Young Republicans. I'm your host, Jordan Overturf, safely sheltered in place at my home. I'm not going to tell you where you live, but I am free to move about the county currently. What a crazy time. If ever there was an opportunity for rumors to run rampant, this would be it. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to know exactly what is happening here in this state, there's a couple websites you need to make sure that you're checking it out. First and foremost, the governor's website, Governor Abbott's official office website. The news releases that he is putting out outlines the executive orders, the regulations that are and fees that are being waived, licensing requirements. If you have a driver's license or vehicle registration that's up for renewal or past its deadline at this point, those have been delayed. There is so much going on right now in terms of the response, making sure that they're setting up supply lines so that way personal protective equipment is available to the hospitals, but also making sure that there is plenty of staff if there is an influx of the number of cases that are being treated, especially the severe ones that require hospitalizations. That's the big fear right now, is that as more cases are reported, that the strain on our system will be felt by the resources necessary, not just the human resources, but also everything with ventilators, face masks. And it's been amazing to sit here and watch the public-private partnerships that are going on across this nation in order to make sure supplies are getting or hospitals are getting the supplies that they need. Boy, it's tough keeping up with everything, but make sure you're checking out the governor's official website. That's gov.texas.gov. Real easy to find. Also, make sure you want to check with the Department of State Health Services. The Texas Department of State Health Services is the one that is overseeing a large part of the information about the coronavirus. What is the truth? What are the myths? What is really happening in the state? What is the count? All of that stuff can be found at their website. So make sure you Google the Texas Department of State Health Services. That is a great resource if you want to find out more about what's going on with coronavirus. Also, pretty much any agency, if you search that agency, say Texas Education Agency, coronavirus, these folks have put pages together. The counties have put pages together, so that way you can easily find everything that's going on. Again, there's so many different changes that are happening at the city, county, state, and federal level. So just make sure that you are doing your part. Do a quick little Google search and look at what's going on your county website. Look at those two state-wide websites to be able to see all that information. Keep up to date. My guest today is Lieutenant Col Allen West, and he is no stranger to responding in time of need. He first and foremost is known for his military service, but then also his service in Congress, previously serving in Florida. He is currently running for state party chair for the Republican Party of Texas, challenging current chairman James Dickey. I had a great time talking to him, not only about what he's doing to help flatten the curve, but what he thinks of this coronavirus response, what he thinks about what the party is doing currently in order to take part in flattening the curve, but also what is the future for the Republican Party of Texas. So even while all this is going on, there are people still discussing what is happening right now, what liberties are at stake, what all is going on. So we had a great time talking to him. I had a great time talking to him, and I really appreciate Colonel West hopping on the phone to talk to us. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Col Allen West. How are things going for you as you shelter in place in the Dallas area?
Well, things are going okay. I can't complain. I'm not in a combat zone and nobody's shooting at me, so I have all the nice amenities of a beautiful home here in the eastern hills of Garland. So I'm fine. It's a nice opportunity to do some reflection, get caught up on reading, and stay connected with people like the young Republicans.
Now, I was reading on your website, the Old School Patriot, you had a new column up today on the Wuhan virus and the effects on the gun industry and how ammo supplies are running as short as toilet paper supplies these days. I guess as you look at this, what is your quick thoughts on the coronavirus and the response from the U.S. so far?
Well, the thing that concerns me is that we're taking a carpet bombing approach and not a precision guided munition approach. I'm just worried about the difference. You know, when I look at previous pandemics, when I look at the fact that we're in flu season right now, where on average flu season affects tens of thousands of people, and yet we have never reacted in such a way. We didn't react this way with swine flu H1N1. So I think that has caused a lot of perplexing, atmosphere. It's caused a lot of people to go into a very panicked mode when we see the reactions. Sadly, we have a lot of people that are losing their employment. We're going to see an increase in our debt and deficit, and that affects your future going forward. So those are some of the things that are the real concerns. And I think that when you live in a free society like we do, there's a level of individual responsibility that is incumbent upon each and every one of us. And we need to step up to the plate and do what we need to do so that we don't lose more of our essential liberties, which is why I think you saw this run on gun sales. I mean, it's way up over 300% increase here within the last month or so.
Yeah, as you look at the government response, are there any things that jump out at you of immediate concern that people here in Texas should be worried about?
Well, I was glad to see the fact that we shut down the travel, especially with China and then, of course, with the European Union, because, if you're in Italy, you can freely go anywhere throughout a European Union country. So I think that was very key for us to try to get containment of this virus. But one of the things that I do have concern about, and it goes back to a quote from Benjamin Franklin, where it says, those who would surrender essential liberties for temporary security will, in the end, have neither security nor liberty. So I just want to make sure that these measures that are being implemented and imposed are not measures that cause us to surrender more of our essential liberties. And again, when you see this run on gun sales, that shows that people aren't so much afraid of this virus. They're more so afraid of what the government can do in order to try to leverage this for their own opportunistic advantages and ideological agendas. We've seen it with the mayor of, I think it's Champaign, Illinois, and also the mayor of New Orleans, who has said that, they are going to, because of the emergency order, they're going to stop all gun sales and transfers of weapons. We know that in California, they have ordered gun stores to shut operations. They have declared them not essential. So those are the type of things we don't want to see happen here in Texas.
So I guess the concern that you're kind of placing the focus on is more from the national level, or is it just vigilance at the local level, since what you're naming is individual, I guess, or is in Louisiana, is that a statewide situation?
Well, I'm just looking at trends. That's one of the things that the military always teaches you, to look for trends, indicators, and warnings. And those are the type of things that we don't want to see happen here in Texas. We don't want to see a usurpation of too many of our individual liberties and freedoms. So that does have a ramification and a consequence here. And as you ask, what are the things that, we want to make sure aren't happening here in Texas? But again, I think that it's about individual responsibility. Let's make sure that we're keeping that social distance. Let's make sure that we are, doing everything that we possibly can from a personal hygiene perspective, and to reduce the contact that we have over these next few days. We're on this shelter in place in our homes order. But let's make sure that we don't allow this to carry on for too long, because I think that has more long-term, severe economic ramifications and ramifications for our personal living.
So do you think these cities that are starting to put shelter in place provisions out there, I mean, they're not explicitly saying that gun stores can't be open, but Is there a potential that these shelter-in-place orders that are happening either at the city or county level are going to infringe on those rights?
Well, you just can't never predict that. You want to believe in the best, hope for the best. But what I'm saying is that there are some out there, mayors and people in certain areas, like I just mentioned, California. The governor of Illinois made a great stand saying that, he will not shut down any gun stores or anything like that or ranges. So I think that he took the right course of action. So it will be interesting to see, how people fall in making these decisions about what is essential and what is non-essential. I think that's the key thing that we have to stay vigilant and stay focused on to make sure that we don't have people that overstep, elected officials that overstep some of their power and try to restrict too much of our freedoms and liberties.
I'm curious, as you look at how things operate in Texas, you have experience in the military and how things operate there, experience in Congress and how things sort of operate there. I'm curious, as you look at Texas right now, where are areas you think that we could be improving, or what are some of the policy points you think will come out of this coronavirus response?
Well, I think one of the major policy points we need to be looking at is how we can get more production and manufacturing back here in the United States of America, and especially in Texas. When we look at these supply lines, we got to make sure that we are diversifying them and we're not so dependent upon a country like China, which, let's be very honest, is a geopolitical foe. I think that Texas has a great opportunity going forward. We are one of the top economies in the world, 10th largest in the world, definitely a leader here in the United States of America, of looking and seeking how we can have even more job opportunities come to Texas, because we're going to, be more circumspect about our supply lines. We're going to be more circumspect about production and manufacturing. Maybe we can start looking at Texas being the next great boom for pharmaceutical production here in the United States of America, instead of us trusting and depending on a foe like China, which is a communist country.
So one of the reasons we have you on the podcast is you are currently running for state party chair for the Republican Party of Texas. As you look at the RPT response and the decision to postpone state convention, do you think that they're taking the prudent steps necessary? And what kind of differences would you take if you were in the chairman's spot right now?
Well, I just recently read Michael Wally, who is the chairman of the North Carolina GOP. One of the things he's doing with the county conventions and state senate district conventions, he's looking at how he can leverage video teleconferencing, Skype, all of these other information technology platforms to continue on to have them, but abide by the no over 10 people congregating rule. And I believe that they also have their convention coming up in May, but he is going to wait later for a decision point to see where this goes about. And just the same here in Texas, we have a meeting for the State Republican Executive Committee on April the 4th. It's very important that you show that you're considering different needs and different measures that you can put into place to make sure you don't have such a large disruption. But I think that this is a great time for us to look at other means of technology where we can continue on to have whatever votes are necessary, and we can continue on to have teleconferencing, maybe at not just a large level, but we may have to push that the convention a little bit later. But let's look at the ways that we can continue on with our process at our local levels with our county conventions and our state senate district conventions. And I think that that's some of the things that I would be offering.
So we got a little ahead of ourselves in talking about you entering this race. For those who somehow have missed the boat and not heard about you and your career in the military and Congress, can you give us a quick rundown on your background and experience?
Sure. Very simple. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, inner city, same neighborhood Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was raised in. I got my commission through ROTC at the University of Tennessee on 31 July 1982. I served 22 years active duty service in the United States Army. My last duty assignment in the Army was at Fort Hood, Texas. Any smart man. After he retires from the military, he's going to look to his wife, who also had a career military dad, and just say, wherever you want to move to, honey, let's do that. So my wife had a great offer from Raymond James. She's a financial advisor, and she's also originally from Jamaica, so we settled in South Florida. We lived there for 11, 12 years. I ran for Congress there after I came back from Afghanistan as an advisor to the Afghan Army, served one term in Congress, and then in December of 2014 came back to Texas, settled here in the Dallas Metroplex area, and been here since that time, working with public policy foundations and also working to support Republican Party groups and organizations over these past going on 6 years.
So I guess the first question most folks are going to ask with you coming from other parts of the country is, why come to Texas and run for state party chair?
Well, why come to Texas? I guess for the same reason that Davy Crockett came to Texas. He was a former member of Congress from the other side in Tennessee. Sam Houston, Jim Bowie, William Barrett Travis. They came to Texas to fight for liberty and freedom. I came to Texas because I have family that is here. My wife's parents are here. Her father has unfortunately passed away. So I run for chairman because I think that right now, when you look at the ideological battlefield that we have out here, Texas is on the forefront. And Texas is at the top of the list for the progressive socialist left to try to turn this state so that they can get control, and they can control the electoral votes that we're going to have. And that includes 3 new electoral votes by way of 3 new congressional districts coming up after this next round of redistricting. So why would I want to be the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas? Because we're on the front lines of freedom, not just for the great state of Texas, but for the United States of America.
I know an initial question that a lot of people will have, especially those considering the vote for you later on at state convention, is your running a criticism of the current leadership, or you just taking a step toward a leadership role, which seems like you're naturally inclined to with your background?
Well, one of the things they teach you in the military is you move to the sound of the guns, and that's what's happening right here. There is an ideological fight, as I said, here in Texas, and I am not talking about anybody else's leadership. I'm looking at the fact that we are heading in the wrong direction. Every major urban population center in the state of Texas is controlled by the Democrat Party, the left. And when you look at how they have been successful in flipping states such as Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and even Virginia just recently, you see that is their blueprint. Virginia was basically flipped because of 4 counties, because 91 out of 95 counties declared themselves sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment. When you look at what's happening here in Texas between Dallas County, even Fort Worth and Tarrant County, Ted Cruz did not win Tarrant County in 2018. Houston, Harris County, San Antonio, Bexar County, Austin, Travis County, El Paso County. You follow those boxes of blue on the electoral county by county breakdown map of Texas, and you can see exactly that same strategic plan being implemented here. And that's what leaders do. Leaders have vision. They look ahead. They think strategically, and they try to thwart the efforts of the other side. And I think that what we have not done a good job of doing here in Texas as the Republican Party is go on offense and challenge the left. When you have people that are moving into Texas, coming from these failed states such as California, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey, when you have corporate business headquarters that are moving here, we need to be very explicitly explaining to them why the policies and the regulations and the policies and procedures and the values and the principles are the reasons why they moved here. They left those places. We should not have anyone talking about turning Texas blue, and we should force the other side to define what that means. You don't win on defense. You can only win on offense. And I think that that's one of the key things I want to bring to the table.
So if you were to be elected with convention being pushed back, what would your priority action be, your first priority action be as chairman of the party?
Well, one of the first things is I want to challenge the Texas Democrat chairman to a series of debates, because I think we need to bring them out and expose them and get them to stand and try to defend what they believe in. Second thing is I think we need to have more engagement and policy inclusiveness in our urban centers, in our inner city communities. The Black and Hispanic communities are conservative in nature. We need to talk to them about those principles and values, and we need to reconnect with them and sustain those relationships, not just ramp up during election cycles, but stay there and be engaged and do the things that show that we're partners with them. We need to have more corporate business leader roundtables. We need to have more small engagement roundtables with pastors because they are key, especially in those Black and Hispanic communities. And I believe that the other thing that we have to do is start building a farm team. That's why you young Republicans are very important. You know, I grew up in Atlanta, and the success of the Atlanta Braves Major League Baseball team was a direct reflection of the success of their farm team system. So we got to start looking at how we develop our talent at the local level, up to the state level, all the way up to the major leagues, which would be at the federal level. So that's one of the key things that I want to continue to do. But then also, we've got to message better. We've got to get our message out there. We've got to be more visible.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you in terms of the small kitchen table efforts that need to go on within the communities. And I applaud anyone who can help kickstart that effort and go beyond your traditional grassroots efforts. My question to you is, as someone is sitting there around the kitchen table, do you feel like their battle is an ideological one, or is it beating down the perceptions that are created by either national media or from the Democratic messaging machine to the progressive left of Hollywood? Where is the real battle, and where do you think we can gain more victories in these kitchen table conversations?
Well, it's all of the above. I mean, we really, if you want to look at it at the three levels, from a tactical level, an operational level, and a strategic level, it's all of the above. Yes, we have a national machine out there with the national media and also Hollywood. It's a cultural war that we have to realize and engage and fight against. But then, at the grassroots, at the ground level, it is building those relationships and defeating that messaging by going to the source and going to the point. And again, you have to sustain those relationships. That's just the same as what we had to do in Afghanistan while I spent 2.5 years there. You can't show up in Afghanistan and just spend, 3 months or 6 months and say that I'm here to try to help advise and to train you. It took some time to build that relationship and a trusting relationship. And then you have to teach, coach, and mentor your replacement coming in. So I think that that's what we have to start doing here. And it is about re-educating people about, their principles and values. I will tell you that is one of the reasons I wrote my last book, which is called We Can Overcome, an American Black Conservative Manifesto. It came out last month in February, because there are so many people that believe conservatism is something very new in the Black community when it has existed going back to Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Madam C.J. Walker. And we need to tell those stories once again and remind people of those fundamental principles and values so they don't fall asunder to the poisonous message of victimization, which is what the left wants to promote.
It seems like that's a huge part of Candace Owens' message and the Blexit movement. Do you subscribe to those type of neoconservative movements that are going on right now?
I don't know about neoconservative or anything like that. All I'm talking about is reconnecting people to their fundamental principles and values. And I think that when you start to talk about conservatism in the Black community, it goes back to how my parents raised me. It was about our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. It was about strong sense of family and individual responsibility, quality education, small business entrepreneurship, and then service to the nation. My dad was a corporal in World War II. My older brother was a lance corporal in Vietnam. I did 22 years myself. Now my nephew, my older brother's son, is served. That's just really part of who we are, service to this great nation. So I think that we need to have those examples of people going back into the communities, and especially examples of people such as that in leadership within the Republican Party. That's what makes a difference. And hats off to President Trump. Back in 2016, when he challenged the Black community, saying, "What do you have to lose?" But he backed it up with his policies and his principles that have given him anywhere from a 27 to 34% approval rating in the Black community.
Do you think there is room to grow this cycle as far as all of those demographics? Do you think the Republican Party has the ability to reach more of these groups? And if so,
Yes, I do.
then how do we do
Yes, I
that?
do.
How do we do that on a personal level? And how do you bring that leadership as Republican Party chairman?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to get out there and show yourself, just the same as I did recently by going down to speak to the Southwest Dallas Republican Club in DeSoto off of Hampton Road. And, when you just get the opportunity to speak to 125 people and 25% of that group were Black and Hispanic, that's how you make a difference. And the words get spread out there. You want to continue to travel around the state like I've been doing. I was down in the Houston Fifth Ward and talking to a group of Black pastors and, again, telling them about the history of the Republican Party of Texas, which was founded on July the 4th, 1867 by 150 Blacks. Many of them did not know that. And it happened right there in the Houston-Galveston area, that one of the early chairmen of the Republican Party of Texas was a Black businessman, Norris Cooney, from 1884 to 1898. But the interesting thing is that when I am telling them that they are hearing for the first time, there are a lot of Republicans in the state of Texas that did not know that. And so if we don't understand ourselves, if we don't have an ability to message and understand our history, understand our fundamental principles and values, and live by those principles and values, and continue with that constant engagement, if we do those simple basic things, we're going to be successful.
What are some issues that you feel like the Democrats that we can defeat the Democrats on in these kitchen table conversations that you feel are?
It's very simple. When you talk to people about education opportunities, think about the State of the Union address. When President Trump gave an opportunity scholarship to a young girl from the inner city of Philadelphia, 9 years old, with just her single mother with her. First and foremost, when I was born in 1961, the Black community, two-parent household, was almost 77%. Today it's 24%. That's a result of the Great Society policies of Lyndon Baines Johnson. So I think those are the type of things we communicate. When you look at the fact that we have had, since 1973, Roe versus Wade, 20 million Black babies murdered in the womb. The second largest abortion provider headquarters in the world is located in Houston, Texas. And on the south side of the city, off of I-45 on the west side, and it's called Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was founded by white supremacists and a racist by the name of Margaret Sanger. 71% of Planned Parenthood clinics are in the minority community. Those are the type of conversations that you start to have about education, about strengthening family, about caring for your future generation. And I've seen that work very well with President Trump. He just did something that no one else had done before. He challenged and then he engaged. Criminal justice reform. We've got to get on these historic Black colleges and universities, but we got to get on all colleges and universities because we have ceded that territory over to the progressive socialist left, and they are now turning our system of education to a system of indoctrination. So those are the type of things that we need to do. We need to sit down and listen to people and ask them what affects you. And most people will tell you they want to be able to have economic empowerment. I don't think anyone wants to be economically enslaved, but if they don't hear any message of being a victor, then they will listen to the message of being a victim. And that's what we see happening in the United States of America, and that's what we see happening in our major population centers, to include right here in Texas.
Now, I've been reading a few columns lately that have tried to create this myth around the idea that there is no longer a swing voter. But I contend that when you look at voter turnout, the majority of the population does not go out and vote. So I want to get away from the back and forth partisan divide and ask you, as state party chair, how would you go out and get more of these non-voting Texans to engage in the process and vote Republican in November?
I would get people to vote the principles and values of the reason why they came here to Texas and understand what Texas represents and how Texas truly is that beacon for the United States of America. And when you have those principled conversations, when you talk to people about their values, and I've done that, all my life pretty much so, they see and they understand. If you just communicate with them, that was the strength of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan basically said, these are the things that I believe in. I believe in you. I believe in empowering you as an individual, not making you subjective or not subjugated to a collective grouping or a demographic. And so that's what we have to do. We have to go out with a principled message that connects with everyone. And we have to challenge this philosophy of governance that has never been successful anywhere in the world. It's not about Republican and Democrat. It's about understanding what is the relationship between the individual in the United States of America in Texas to the institution of government. And I think that's why so many people have moved here to Texas, because of those policies and those principles and values that enable individuals to thrive, being at the corporate business headquarters, being at the small businesses that are coming here. We've got to capitalize on the success of Texas and not allow people to come in here and say that we want to have a different type of philosophy. The fact that 660,000 people voted for Bernie Sanders in the state of Texas is very disconcerting. That shows that we're not explaining, what this thing called socialism really is. It's about wealth redistribution, nationalizing economic production. It's about creating a welfare dependency state. And that's not what Texas stands for.
As you bring up President Trump and the reelection, I do kind of wonder, do you think that there is a possibility that Texas creates some distance between itself and the president as it gets ready for the election? Or do you feel like the president's record is going to be the launch point for more Republican gains in November?
I think the president's record should be a launch point for gains all across the United States of America. What we see being espoused from the other side of the aisle is that they just want to defeat him. They're not talking about what they stand for. They're not talking about how they want to improve the quality of life or the way of life of the American citizen. When you look at the fact that President Trump released the incredible and dominable entrepreneurial spirit of our oil and gas industry by way of hydraulic fracturing, now the United States of America has become energy independent, a net exporter of energy resources. And that's why Saudi Arabia and Russia are doing what they're trying to do to undermine that incredible opportunity that's been created because he reversed those policies of the previous administration. So I think that we take those policies and we talk about how they have improved the lives of the individual Texans that are here. We talk about the growth, the opportunity, and prosperity of our economy here in Texas, and the means by which that has been able to come about is because we have less onerous federal government taxation and regulation and unfunded mandates that are being pushed down upon.
So for my last couple of questions for you, I want to wrap up this idea of what you think it will take to bring more people into the Republican Party of Texas. And I want to start off going back to this question of ideology. Do you feel like a question that I get a lot is, why are there purity tests within the political framework? Why do the two parties seem to adhere to a purity test when it comes to either elected officials or people participating within the party?
Well, I think it's important when you look at the platform of the Republican Party of Texas to have those planks. And those planks are the foundation. That's what makes this Republican Party of Texas what it is. But going back to what Ronald Reagan said, he never looked at someone that was only 80% in agreement with him as 20% of his enemies. So it is not about having a litmus test, but I believe that if you understand the right role and responsibility of government, that you will agree that we don't need to have the onerous, obtrusive, and invasive reach of government into the individual and subsuming or usurping your individual liberties. And that's why I say, what is the right relationship between the individual citizen and the institution of government? And we can debate about the fringes, but I think that our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers gave us some foundations, and that's what you see in the platform of the Republican Party of Texas. And that's what the Republican grassroots, that's what they developed. And that's why it's important for folks, if they want to have a say in that, if they want to have input in that, then they should become delegates to the convention.
Now, on the left, we see that young Democrats are identifying more and more with socialism, and they're challenging the norms within their party. On the Republican side, do you feel like young Republicans are heading in a good direction to grow the party?
I think they are. I believe that we are seeing more young conservatives. I sit as an honorary advisory board member for Turning Point USA, and I'm one of the stable of speakers for Young America Foundation. So I get a lot of opportunity to speak with young high school students, college students who are on college campuses. Just last month, I was at the University of Michigan talking about the Second Amendment. And so I do see young people that are stepping up and understanding that they do want to maintain their freedoms and liberties. They don't want to see themselves saddled with an onerous amount of debt that will affect how they see the American dream and how they can live their lives. So I do see that next generation being raised up. But it's so important, and going back to what I talked about with the farm team, that we just don't look at young people and say, just sit over here, make phone calls, go knock on doors, whatever. We need to start looking at elected positions of leadership that we can get them into. Like I said, build that farm team from the single A level all the way up to the major leagues. But we've got to start regenerating that next generation of young conservative mind and talent that are going to be out there to carry this torch forward.
Well, Colonel, I appreciate your time today. As we wrap up, I want to give you a final opportunity to make your pitch to the Republicans who will be listening to this. A lot of them will be state delegates going to the state convention, however that develops. But here's your chance. Why should Texas Republicans vote for Lieutenant Colonel Allen West for state party chair?
Well, my life has been defined by service, sacrifice, and commitment. I don't take those responsibilities lightly. The oath that I took on 31 July 1982 is an oath that will live with me forever, whether or not I'm in uniform or what have you. When I see what is happening in Texas, Texas needs to make sure that it stands strong. Texas needs to be that beacon, a strong constitutional conservatism. And I see right now that there is an ideological enemy that has Texas in its sights. We need to make sure that we don't allow that to happen. So it's not that I am running against anything. I'm running for something. I'm running for Texas. I'm running for our constitutional republic that we call the United States of America. And I'm running for the future generations such as yourselves and my two daughters who are 26 and 23. So they can enjoy all the great freedoms that I've had in this incredible land, in this incredible state.
Colonel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service in the military, your service in Congress, and your service as a candidate here in Texas. We look forward to watching you continue on the campaign trail, and we wish you best of luck.
Thank you very much. You guys take care.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. All right. Thank you to Colonel West for joining us. Thank you to you for listening. As always, if you want to find out what's going on with us, what's the latest, find old episodes, make sure you are following us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Texas Podcast. Make sure you are following Texas Young Republicans on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Texas YRs. And make sure that you are prepared to flatten the curve. Stay at home, do your research, actually look at what's going on out there. The FDA announced last week that there are scams going on all over the place. The latest one is related to at-home testing. These tests are currently not approved. There is no known coronavirus at-home test on the market right now. So if you see someone trying to sell it, it's a scam. You can probably go to the Attorney General's office to figure out how to fight those types of things and report those individuals. But folks, stay vigilant. Make sure that you are doing your part. Stay at home. Shout out to Chairman Hayden Paget for helping lead the Come and Take Out rallying cry for our local restaurants, our small businesses in the area on Tuesday, doing a great takeout event, just making sure you call up a local business, order some food, maybe an adult beverage if you're so inclined. have it delivered to your house so you can help those folks stay alive, help our service industry people continue to work and provide for their families. We appreciate everyone who is doing their part. We know that this is a difficult time, but we will get through this. Coronavirus may be tough, but Texans are tougher. So I appreciate everyone, all you're doing. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get this podcast. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram, Texas YRs, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Texas YRs. I don't say it enough, but thank you again for listening. Thank you for all your support, and we will continue to bring you as many candidate interviews as possible between now and November. Until then, friends, see you down the road.